How are you guys doing today? My name is Tristan Cotton. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about what countries are avoiding the euro and why. First off, I want to introduce you guys to the color legend. So I organized this in a way that's going to distinguish key points in the material. So whenever you see lavender highlight, that's going to represent important names and figures that impacted the euro. Orange is going to represent key terms that are essential to the development of the lesson. And then red are going to be notable dates that help establish the timeline of the development. So, what is the euro? The euro is the official currency of the EU. It's used by 19 of 27 of the member states. It was first brought forward in 1970 by the French Prime Minister Pierre Verna in the Verna Report. The idea was to create an area where services, products, and capital could circulate freely without competition distortion or regional disequilibrium. Eventually, the Verna Report was abandoned. However, in 1979, the European monetary system was launched. This established two things: the European the currency unit, and the exchange rate mechanism. So, let's see. So, some quick statements about that. The European currency unit, the ECU, is essentially the precursor to the euro. It acted as the EU's unit of account. The EU would budget spending. The EU's budgets and spending was denominated in ECUs. The exchange rate mechanism, or the ERM, currencies had their exchange rates fixed to the ECU with adjustable bands. For example, the French franc and the German mark were fixed with a 2.5% band, whereas the Italian lira was fixed with a 6% band. And then another statement, finally in 1987, a single currency was mentioned again by the president of France, Francois Mitterrand. This is the second time a single currency was proposed. Excuse me if I mispronounced that. So, what countries use the euro? 19 of the 27 European countries currently take part in the member states. These countries are Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Spain. There are also 6 non-EU states using the euro. These states are Monaco, San Marino, the Vatican City, Andorra, Kosovo, and Montenegro. The first 4 of these states have a monetary agreement with the EU. However, Kosovo and Montenegro adopted the currency unilaterally, which essentially means without permission. And that I found that very interesting, that they adopted it sort of without permission. If anybody has any idea of how how that would happen naturally, and they'd be able to get away with it, please hit me up in the comments. So why do countries use the euro? Uh, One prominent example of why a country would abandon their own currency is between the French and the Germans in the 1990s. Initially, the two countries tied their currencies together, hoping for their exchange rates to drop as well as decrease German inflation and borrowing, and increase the value of the Deutschmark. However, as time went on, French growth was still behind the German growth, and their borrowing rates varied. Eventually, consumers began to think the franc was overvalued against the Deutschmark. Again, the two currencies were tied together, and the Deutschmark was worth less. And this worried the French, who in return proposed the idea again of a single currency. Why don't we share? So why would the Germans agree to devalue their Deutschmark to help out the French? Let's see. So there were two main reasons. Having a common currency would prevent competitive devaluations. So, in other words, these countries wouldn't be competing through tariffs and stuff like that to devalue each other. Rather, they would be able to, connect. And then the common currency would help bring out political and institutional union in Europe. So, companies would be a lot more inclined to work together with others that were in other countries, rather than um, argue about exchange rates and stuff. So, which companies opted out, or which countries opted out of the euro? Uh, Denmark, Sweden, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Bulgaria, Croatia, and Romania. Countries like Denmark and the UK opted out of the euro at the signing of the Maastricht Treaty in 1992. Sweden had a referendum on the euro in 2003, and according to EU rules, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, as members of the EU, should be making progress towards swapping. However, these countries have made it clear that they're not really interested. Uh, on another note, Bulgaria, Croatia, and Romania, however, are currently on track to join the euro. So hopefully soon there's going to be three more countries right there that are joining. So why do these countries not use the euro? In comparison to Germany and Italy, European countries hesitate to join the euro in fear that it will devalue their currency, meaning that their services and their products may not be of the same exchange value that they originally were. Therefore, they would essentially lose out with the same business that they're running. Additionally, if countries later decided to leave the euro, their original currency would be nowhere near as strong as the euro. It would almost immediately devalue the entire country. This stability, however, is defined by the year-to-year inflation increases to be no more or near than 2%, according to the HICP, or the Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices. Now, step two, once these criteria have been met, countries must apply to join the Eurozone. Then they must meet the Maastricht criteria or the convergence criteria. First, their inflation rate can't exceed 1.5% of the average above three EU members with the lowest HICP inflation rates. So, once they hit a standard, that becomes the new standard, or once they hit the bar, that becomes the new standard, and then these countries are expected to furthermore keep their GDP and their inflation intact to prove that they can stay a part of this system. So next is the country must not be under excessive deficit procedure at the time of the examination. Their price stability must not be more than 2% above the rate of the best performing members. And finally, they must participate in the European rate mechanism for 2 years without severe tensions, specifically without devaluing the euro. They must successfully use it within their economy for at least 2 years without devaluing it in order to join and be a part of it permanently. So now, can countries be kicked off? Theoretically, yes. The countries can be kicked out of the Eurozone according to the SGP, the Stability of Growth Pact, but it would be very devastating. It would be very senseless in a way to do that to another country, because by the time that happens, the euro is most likely going to be stronger than said country's original currency, and kicking them off the euro would result in a major debt that it would be basically impossible for them to repay. So there would really be no benefit of kicking them out. It would just be, everybody would be put in debt, so to say. Instead, countries that don't follow the rules are first subject to like economic sanctions and stuff like that. So there's punishment, but it's pretty difficult to be kicked off of the eurozone, or out of the eurozone rather. So what is the SGP that I was mentioning? The SGP is the Stability and Growth Pact. Written in the 1990s, the SGP applies to all European countries, not just ones in the eurozone. It was written by Helmut Kohl. The SGB basically states that countries must keep their deficit at 3% of their GDP, and they must also keep their debt at 60% of GDP. So we stated that in the last slide. If countries happen to exceed these parameters, they are required to come forth with a plan to lower them, and that plan must be approved by the EU. So if they go below that standard, that bar that we were talking about, they must come forward with a plan, and this plan is going to be observed by the EU, and it's going to be given back to them, probably with some revisions on it to help them out in the future, get back to their goal. So where is the euro today? So currently the value of the euro against the American dollar, for example, the American dollar is a very good representative to compare to, because it's considered one of the most stable currencies in the world and one of the most reliable for sure. The current value as of today, and these are today's numbers, is 1 to about 1.04 cents. So it's actually gone up since most of these studies were initially done. In the last 6 months, we've seen the euro fall to as low as 96 cents to the dollar. and almost the lowest it's been since 2002. As I was looking through that chart, I think I came across at one point they were down to maybe 88 cents, but over a 20-year span, this is nearly the lowest that they've been. But this is because of the expected inevitable recession that has been foreseen by economics and politicians. Threats of a recession has caused investors to pull out of the euro and reinvest elsewhere. These economists, from what I could tell going through these articles, have been talking about a recession for a long time now. They've been anticipating it rather. And this recession could prove to be beneficial in the long run. It could help the euro find its equilibrium. Um, well, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for hanging around and listening. Please email me if you have any questions. You guys have a great day, and see you next semester.